Hey, it's post lunch, and I thought I'll just record something around this topic of gaslighting. And before I begin, I want to acknowledge something important. There is so much study, research, writing, and education around this topic of gaslighting, right? And about how to identify it, how to recognize it, and how to spot the signs. And I think that's an amazing place to be in because there's so much wonderful awareness around it. I believe that the moment we can name a pattern, we become less likely to be trapped by it. And that's great. Now, I also want to take the next step about this topic purely for Neil and Nia's sake, and recording this is mostly for them, but also for anyone dealing with the same question. And the question is, if learning about gaslighting only helps me identify it but does not help me move beyond it, what exactly have I gained? The goal has to be peace, progress, or knowing what to do next, right? So let's start with something relatable. You must have been in conversations where either you or the person you're talking to says, "That's not what I said. That's not what happened. You're remembering it all wrong. That's not what I meant." And before long, everyone is trying to prove whose reality is correct. And in the meantime, the thing that actually needed attention quietly leaves the room. The conversation starts with something that needs attention, but somehow it ends up somewhere completely different. Not what do we do now, but who remembered correctly. And that's where I'd like to pause. Because the first thing worth recognizing here is this. Human beings are not security cameras. We don't record life. We experience it, we interpret it, we feel it, and we attach meaning to it. And then we remember it through those meanings. Which means that two people can genuinely walk away from the same event carrying different realities. Not because one is lying or one is bad, not because one is trying to manipulate, simply because human beings are imperfect narrators of their own stories. And from where each person stands, their memory may genuinely feel true. Now, sometimes there is pure manipulation and intentional manipulation. I am not disregarding that. Sometimes there is agenda and the confusion is intentional. But I've found that spending my energy trying to prove whose reality is right rarely moves life forward. Because here's the problem. Nobody can force you to hold a different memory than the one that you hold. In fact, the harder someone tries to make you abandon your experience, the more tightly you tend to hold on to it. We've all done it. Right? The more someone tells us we are wrong, the less willing we become to listen. So why spend all your life fighting battles that cannot truly be won? Why fight over ownership of memory? Why fight over ownership of perception? Why fight over ownership of experience? I've started asking myself a different question now. A much more useful one, I feel. One that immediately changes the direction of such conversations. And the question is, what are we trying to actually accomplish here? Not who's right, not who remembers correctly, not whose version wins, but what needs to happen next? What decision needs to be made? What boundary needs to be set? What action needs to be taken? What outcome are we seeking? Because that's where power returns back to the people who are talking about what needs to be done. Maybe we remember things differently, and that's okay. Maybe we remember and experience it differently, and that's okay too. Maybe neither of us will ever fully agree about what happened. That's okay too. Because the question still remains, what are we trying to accomplish now? Because drama feeds confusion and clarity feeds progress. And many difficult conversations survive because people spend all their energy discussing competing realities instead of discussing outcomes. And I've found that one of the most peaceful things we can do is to allow space for both people to hold their versions of reality, not because all realities are equally accurate, not because truth doesn't matter, but because forcing agreement rarely creates understanding. It usually creates resistance. So perhaps freedom begins when we stop trying to control another person's memory and stop allowing them to control ours, and focus instead on what actually can move. The next step, the next decision, the next action, the next boundary, or the next outcome. So the next time you find yourself trapped in a conversation that keeps circling around, that's not what happened, that's not what I said, you're remembering it wrong, just pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, am I trying to solve a problem, or am I trying to win a version of reality? Because at the end of the day, your peace does not come from winning an argument about reality, right? Your peace comes from knowing what matters and refusing to lose sight of it.